Well, should we go through the papers?
Shall we?
I think we shall. Claire Pearsall is here alongside Candice Holdsworth. The last run-out that we're giving you today. Morning to you both. Claire, can we start with the FT, please, and wealth tax? Now, this was in a lot of the papers yesterday as well, but it's worth... I mean, it seems on the surface to be a huge U-turn to say we're not going to do a wealth tax. I was talking to Annalise Dodds yesterday. She said, no, we've been very clear on this for a very long time.
I think this is the problem with the Labour Party, is they're not entirely sure what parts of policy they're going to have and what parts they're not. And, of course, some of the real Labour policies affect a lot of the people that are trying to woo over to vote for them in the next general election. And when you're starting to look at wealth tax, it's going to hit those people who would traditionally vote Conservative, who are traditionally older. So if you want to woo that type of audience, then you're looking at pensions, you're looking at wealth taxes, you're looking at inheritance taxes. And suddenly, the Labour policy doesn't seem quite so attractive. And it's quite interesting that not all of the front bench actually understand what it is that they're putting forward. So Rachel Reeves has come out there and said, no, this is it. We're going to have fiscal discipline, but we're not going to tax wealthy people anymore, which is so far removed from what Labour policy was and possibly should be, that I think people are going to get very, very confused, and they're already accusing Keir Starmer and his Labour Party of being sort of light blue. There was some
line yesterday which I wrote down. So the Labour Party saying the increased taxes doesn't bring about prosperity or national prosperity, which again is so sort of. Well, it's so opposite of Corbyn, but maybe that's the point.
Yeah, but I do think, though, that Rachel Reeves is a little politically idiosyncratic. I mean, she's got a track record in saying things that you're like, oh, I would not have expected that from a Labour politician, especially around tax. She does seem to be a bit more fiscally conservative on these issues. In fact, in many ways, I really like Rachel Reeves just as a person. She comes across as very sensible to me, and she always has. I think she's always said things that I really agree with. But the thing is, how are Labour perceived as a whole? And, you know, whereas I think Rachel Reeves is quite a solid sort of person, I think that Keir Starmer, much less so. And, you know, it's not very clear where he sits politically. At one point he was a radical, now he seems to be trying to capture the centre ground, and I don't think it's that credible.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Candice, let's stick with you, shall we? The front page of the Mail. And tell us a bit more about this rainbow badge scheme.
Yes. So this is in the Daily Mail. So a number of NHS trusts have signed up to something called the Rainbow Badge Scheme. And I think it's run by certain lobby groups like Stonewall. And they basically mark you up or down based on whether you use gender-neutral language. So are you using the word parent instead of mother? Are you saying women's health rather than just talking about, like, general procedures? And it's come in for a lot of criticism, as these things tend to do, because people want to use very specific language. They want to say mother, they want to say women. And so this has caused a bit of anger that the NHS is signing up to these schemes.
But isn't... One would presume... that actually this is not just about the language, it's about the bigger issue around the Rainbow Badge Scheme would be the sort of respect for LGBT patients and their partners or husbands and wives or all that stuff. And actually some of these controversial gender things will just be like a tiny little bit at the end, I think.
Well, so I think we need to have that debate. So, yes, there is that, certainly, absolutely. And you do need to, say you have a transgender man giving birth, you need to know how to care for that person in that specific scenario, so I think that's very good. I would say, though, things like not having specific terms to talk about women's health issues like postnatal depression, for instance, I don't agree with that. So, I mean...
But you can't talk... You see, that's right. That's where I do struggle a little bit. Why can't you talk about postnatal depression?
Well, you should be able to, and I agree that you have to look at families who are made up very, very differently, and you have to be able to be flexible with who you're talking to, understand the sort of nuances of family life, but you also don't erase women We have fought so long and hard to get conditions recognised, to have discussions around women's health to be put on television. I mean, 5 years ago, nobody mentioned the menopause.
No.
And now we have much more of an
Can't
understanding.
get away from it now.
You can't get away from it now, and rightly so. And it needs to be out there, and it needs to
I
be
just
spoken
don't
about, and
understand.
I don't want it to go backwards.
No, well, see, I'm all for if for whatever reason somebody needs a gender-neutral term, let's use it.
Yeah.
But that I don't see why you would then need to stop using anything else.
Yeah, why do they need to be at odds with each other? And I think that's what everyone's saying. But I think the problem is sometimes it does, and people, lose that sort of subtlety and nuance. I mean, I do think, when you're when you're with someone in one of those situations, they're giving birth, I think you should just be respectful towards what they want in that situation. And I think that's very important. And I think that's easy to do.
That's common sense.
It is just common sense, and it's respect towards people, and surely that's what it really comes down to, is respecting the person who is in front of you.
Which is what, in a way, what the Rainbow Badge scheme should operate. So you are respectful to whoever that person is.
Should be that way, but that should be common sense.
That's common sense.
It seems obvious. I mean, I don't know why it has to be politicised.
Maybe we should all just be in charge. Maybe that would be the answer to everything. Claire, shall we have a look at the eye, shall we? And the Spanish football kiss row, it rumbles on, doesn't it?
It does rumble on, and this is quite an interesting article. This is Rebecca Reed writing her own experiences of being a woman and allowing a certain amount of behaviour to be gotten away with, because as girls we are taught, well, and certainly I was, that you didn't make a fuss and you had to be nice, and girls were sort of sugar and spice. And it's only as I've grown up I've realised that's utter rubbish. And you don't need to be like that. You can be forceful, you can be sure of your own opinion, but it's sort of with this whole fight around the Spanish kiss, which is wrong. I want to put that solely out there. It should not have happened. And the doubling down of the Spanish boss was awful. And I think women need to be able to stand up for themselves without being called aggressive, which is normally what happens. But also, I think we need to look at how we bring up girls and boys, because you can't just have everything for one gender and say boys are nasty. And as the mother of a son, I've had that levelled at me, that my son was the problem, it wasn't the girl, when clearly it was just children. So I think we have to be a little bit careful, but girls, definitely, you need to be able to stand up for yourself without being called aggressive, rude or nasty, whereas when men do it, they are confident.
Yes, and saying no as a girl and setting a boundary, because sometimes you hear that, young girls will say, well, I didn't want to hurt his feelings. It's like, no, if you don't like someone and you don't want to be with them, you can set that boundary, and that's no problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, Rebecca makes this point. She says, if you are raised with sweetness being the ultimate goal, then you arrive in adulthood as a woman, unable to tell men, even in your own homes, or, in this case, the Spanish football chief kissing you on the world stage, to get lost.
Yes.
Yeah. To say no.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's...
Fair point.
we've lost that ability. It's very, very sad that we can't drill that into people, that actually if you say no, you mean no, and there's no sort of nuance around it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfectly valid point. Candice, we've got 45 seconds to talk about Nessie in the Telegraph.
So there's so many stories about the Loch Ness Monster at the moment. What is the ongoing fascination with the Loch Ness
Because
Monster?
we still haven't found her. She's there somewhere.
Why do people...
You be very careful what you say.
It's a believer, yes.
Are you?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Why? What is it about it that captured it? I'm not saying it judgmentally. I'm fascinated by people who are fascinated by the Loch Ness Monster.
Because she isn't... If you go up there, you can tell she's there. You can tell
Is it
she's
just a
there.
feeling?
Yeah, the mystique of the...
feeling.
It's so big. Loch Ness is so huge. But she's down there in the depths.
There's a really good piece in The Spectator about that this weekend. Someone who lives on the loch, and he said he's been watching it for years, looking out for her. And he said, it's very similar to what you said. He said, she's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
She is.
Yeah, but anyway, they didn't record these gloops properly, did they?
No, yeah, so they thought that they'd heard something, but now they think it could have been ducks or something.
No, it's
It's
just...
ducks, there you go. It's
Not
ducks,
dogs.
Stephen.
She was there. She was talking to us.
It's ducks.
You've got to keep the faith. Claire, Candice, it's been really good to see you both.
Yeah,
Thank you
so
very
good.
much
Thank
indeed.
you so much.